Good evening. We begin with breaking news, and Buckingham Palace has just released a statement about the health of the King.
Prince William basically had to become a detective inside his own family, because someone, quietly, was editing his father's schedule and hiding his medical reports. It sounds less like a royal household and more like a corporate power struggle, the kind where the boss doesn't even know his own messages are being intercepted. That's where this story really starts, because when you line up what William thought he was seeing against what was actually happening behind those palace doors, the contradictions don't stop piling up. Here's the setup. The official royal schedule for the second half of the year lands on William's desk. On the surface, everything looks completely normal. State visits, receptions, memorials, all the things the monarchy does, quietly, while most of the world isn't watching closely. But William is sitting in his private office at Kensington Palace, reading through the document page by page, and something is wrong. The Commonwealth Summit, a major state visit to Canada, a national memorial service, reception after reception for head of state after head of state. Every major event still has King Charles listed as the primary host, every single one. And by this point, the royal physicians have made themselves clear more than once. Charles needs to significantly reduce his workload. The treatments are ongoing. His health hasn't been stable for months. Everyone close to this situation already knows it. So William is staring at a schedule that would exhaust a completely healthy man, and wondering why none of it, not even the smaller appearances, not even the preparation work, has been delegated to him. Not one piece of it. It makes no practical sense. If this had been a simple oversight, you'd expect a quick fix. Someone saying, "Apologies, we'll adjust that immediately," and everyone moves on with their day. That's not what happened. William reaches out to the coordination office for an explanation. What comes back is vague. Everything follows the latest instructions from the king. No details, no further explanation, just a flat reassurance that everything is fine. Catherine is the one who finally asks the obvious question. Has he asked them directly what's actually going on? William's answer is simple. He's tried, and the answers don't add up. He can see his father is exhausted. The public smile is still there. The sense of duty hasn't wavered for a second. But the fatigue is getting harder to hide underneath all of it. Charles keeps pushing through, because that's what he's always done. But William notices the small things, the slightly slumped shoulders after long ceremonies, the heavier steps, the sharpness still sitting behind his father's eyes, even as the energy underneath it quietly fades.
It's the kind of detail only someone who truly knows a person would ever catch. So now you have the heir to the throne watching his father run himself into the ground, while someone, somewhere inside the system, makes absolutely sure none of that burden ever shifts onto anyone else. Here's something worth asking yourself for a second. If you noticed someone you loved being quietly worked past their limit, and everyone around them stayed silent about it, would you speak up immediately? Or would you wait and gather the full picture first? Type "speak up" or "wait" in the comments. I want to know which one you'd choose. William starts doing exactly what anyone in his position probably would. He starts investigating, quietly. He formally requests the latest medical report on King Charles. This isn't unusual, it's standard procedure. One that's existed for years, specifically so the heir can understand the full picture and help arrange an appropriate workload. Not controversial, not dramatic, just basic operational planning. But this time, the files don't come. Days pass, small delays turn into longer ones, and excuses start circulating through the palace, one after another, none of them quite adding up to anything solid at all. This is where William realizes something is genuinely wrong. He calls the head of support directly. His voice stays firm. He tells them he needs the medical report today, that this is standard procedure, and he wants to know exactly why there's suddenly an obstacle in his way. The response is still evasive, still dancing around the actual question. So William does what anyone does when they're being stonewalled. He tasks his own trusted team with tracing the entire internal document flow, every report, every transfer, every timestamp between offices. And what they find is honestly stunning. Every recent health report on the king, test results, assessments from his top doctors, recommendations for adjusting his schedule, all of it had been routed through Queen Camilla's office first, before going anywhere else. Every single document. That is not how this is supposed to work. William tells Catherine plainly, this is no longer a simple administrative issue. He's right. When medical information about the sitting monarch is being filtered through one specific office before anyone else even sees it, that isn't a process issue, that's a control problem. And the implications reach far beyond one delayed folder. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. The entire point of sharing medical reports with the heir is so he can help manage the workload and help avoid unnecessary risk. If those reports are being delayed or edited or quietly held back, then the heir can't do his job. The king keeps getting scheduled for things he shouldn't be doing. The fatigue keeps accumulating. The health risks keep climbing. And whoever is controlling that flow of information is, in effect, controlling the entire pace of a transition of power. That is not a small thing. That is the exact mechanism by which someone keeps their influence intact, while the person meant to be preparing to take over is left standing in the dark. The timeline matters here. About 3 months before any of this came to light, when the first medical report showed a noticeable decline in Charles's health, Camilla made some very calculated decisions. She sat in her private office at Clarence House and summoned her most trusted aides. Her instruction was direct. All health reports and every proposal to adjust the schedule had to pass through her office first before going anywhere else. Her stated reasoning was simple enough. The king's schedule needed to stay stable for as long as possible, but the actual effect told a story entirely different. Any document mentioning a reduced workload for Charles or new responsibilities for William had to clear her review first. And what happened to those proposals?
Many came back with the same generic language over and over. Needs the king's direct review, not the right time, requires further consideration. Reasonable suggestions from doctors and advisors about gradually shifting responsibility towards William were being systematically blocked. One after another, they simply vanished into the machinery. The logic behind it is clear enough once you look closely. Camilla understood that if William took on more duties early, her own influence and her office's influence would shrink. A straightforward calculation. She'd stood beside Charles through difficult years, built a position for herself inside the institution, and a transition threatened all of it, piece by piece. She also understood William's character well enough to know he wouldn't confront his father directly, not out of fear for himself, out of fear it would worsen Charles's condition. So she used exactly that. She kept Charles at the center of everything, encouraged him to keep going, and quietly jammed every mechanism that would have naturally shifted responsibility towards his son. Before we go further, if this story has you hooked, hit subscribe now. This channel covers royal drama exactly like this every week, and you won't want to miss what happens by the end. It was calculated and it was methodical, but this is where the plan starts to fall apart in ways Camilla never anticipated.
William didn't accept the vague answers and move on. He kept digging. His team ran a full cross-check: schedules, internal emails, document transfer timelines, compared side by side across every office involved. And what they found was a pattern. Proposals to reduce the king's workload had been held back for days, sometimes weeks, before ever reaching him. Some documents had been edited outright. Entire sections suggesting William take on important tasks had simply been removed. This wasn't a random mistake. This wasn't one overworked assistant having a bad week. This was deliberate, repeated, unmistakable. And the evidence kept mounting with every new document they opened. Then something happened that changed the entire trajectory of this story. A long-serving secretary in the royal office, someone who had quietly watched every one of these changes unfold over the past months, had kept the original schedules, the unedited versions, documents that clearly showed important tasks once proposed for William, crossed out or altered before anyone else ever saw them. He'd kept them as a safeguard, a smart instinct in an environment where paperwork was quietly being rewritten behind closed doors. When he received word that he was about to be removed from his position entirely, he decided he wasn't going to stay silent anymore. He arranged a meeting with William outside the palace, somewhere safe, handed over the folder, and told him plainly that he couldn't carry this alone any longer. He'd kept the evidence to protect himself. Now he believed William needed the full truth, unfiltered. That is the turning point. William now holds original documents showing clear intervention from Camilla's office, not simple delays, actual edits, deliberately removing his role from major events, one line at a time. He brings it straight to Catherine, and she tells him what he probably already suspected. This has to go to the king.
Charles needs to see exactly what's been happening so he can make decisions based on reality, not the filtered version that's been quietly reaching him for months. She reminds him that how he approaches this matters just as much as the evidence itself. The meeting happens on a quiet morning at Buckingham Palace. William brings the folder, the original schedules, the ones the secretary risked everything to protect. He sets it on the table and begins to explain, calmly, exactly what happened before those documents ever reached his father's desk. Charles flips through the pages. You can imagine what's moving through his mind in that moment. He's seeing proposals that were altered, crossed out, delayed, long before he ever had the chance to approve or reject a single one of them. These aren't administrative errors. These are edits made specifically to control what information reached him and what decisions he was even allowed to make. He places his hand flat on the folder and says nothing for a long time. William doesn't push. He sits quietly and lets his father process what he's just seen. The silence in that room carries weight, the kind that only comes from realizing exactly how much has been hidden from you by someone you trusted completely. When Charles finally speaks, his voice is steady. He says he sees it clearly now, and this cannot continue. He convenes an emergency meeting, senior advisors, representatives from both offices. Camilla is there, her face carefully composed, but her tightly clenched hands give away exactly how anxious she really is. Charles announces that William will officially take on the majority of royal duties, effective immediately. From this point forward, every proposal related to his schedule must be sent directly to both offices at once, no exceptions. He turns to his son and says simply, "You are ready. I trust you." Camilla tries to speak, her voice trembling as she calls it an administrative error, nothing more. Charles raises his hand. He tells her the decision has already been made. There's no need for further debate. The matter is settled. And that's it. The decision cuts through everything at once. Camilla is removed from many of the most important events. She no longer participates directly in royal decision-making. She sits there, quietly, realizing the influence she fought to hold on to is already gone. William takes on the responsibilities that should have been his all along. Catherine stands beside him, steady as ever. Charles, despite his exhaustion, looks something close to at peace now that the weight has finally been set down. The transition that had been quietly delayed for months happens all at once, not gradually, not managed carefully, because the delay itself had become impossible to sustain any longer. The dam simply broke. Here's what's genuinely interesting when you really sit with this story. The cover-up ended up accelerating exactly what it was trying to prevent. Camilla's goal was to slow William's rise and protect her own influence, but by being this aggressive about controlling information, by editing documents, delaying reports, burying proposals, she created a paper trail that was always going to be found eventually.
If she'd simply let the natural transition happen, William would have gradually taken on more duties, Charles would have gradually stepped back, and her role would have faded slowly over time without ever becoming a headline. Instead, the exposure forced an abrupt, decisive shift, one that removed her influence far more quickly and far more completely than any gradual transition ever would have. It's almost ironic when you think about it that way. This is a pattern seen across every kind of institution, not just royal families, companies, organizations, any structure built on hierarchy and trust. When someone tries to control the flow of information to protect their position, they almost always overreach eventually. They get caught, and the consequences end up worse than if they'd simply accepted the change that was already coming. William didn't have to stage a confrontation or make a single public accusation. He just had to follow the trail, present the facts, and let his father see exactly what had been happening in his own time. The evidence spoke for itself. Charles looked at the documents, understood what they meant, and made his decision. The truth carried its own weight without anyone needing to raise their voice. For William, this whole experience likely reinforced something important about how he'll operate going forward. He didn't rush in with accusations. He didn't create a public scene. He gathered evidence carefully, protected his father from unnecessary stress throughout the process, and only presented his findings once everything was documented and verified beyond doubt. That's not just smart, that's the kind of measured judgment required when you're dealing with sensitive family dynamics that also happen to be matters of state. Catherine's role in all of this deserves its own mention. She was consistently there as a steady sounding board, someone who could see the situation clearly and offer support without ever pushing William toward a rash decision. When she told him he was doing the right thing but needed to stay calm, that his father needed to see the truth rather than a confrontation, she was essentially handing him the exact strategy that ended up working. Her steady counsel made all the difference in how this played out. And there's another layer worth noting here, what this reveals about Charles himself. Despite his exhaustion, despite everything his health had already taken from him, when he was finally presented with clear evidence, he acted decisively. He didn't make excuses for Camilla. He didn't try to minimize what had happened. He looked at the documents, recognized exactly how serious the interference had been, and made the decision that prioritized the stability of the monarchy and the well-being of his own heir.
That takes a certain kind of clarity, especially when the person involved is your wife and you're already running on empty. He could have smoothed things over, delayed the decision, given himself more time to think. He didn't. He called the meeting, made the declaration, and ended the debate in one afternoon. So where does that leave everyone now? William is officially handling the majority of royal duties, which honestly is probably where things should have stood months earlier. Charles can finally follow his doctor's advice and reduce his workload without fearing the institution will suffer for it. Catherine remains the steady presence beside William as he steps fully into this expanded role. And Camilla has been quietly moved away from the center of power, appearing less in official activity, her influence significantly reduced. The secretary who handed over those original documents took an enormous risk, and in the end, it paid off in the sense that the truth finally reached the people who needed it most. What happens to him now is a different question entirely. His courage changed the direction of this entire story. If you strip away the titles and the ceremony and the pageantry, this is a pretty familiar pattern. Someone perceives a threat to their position. They try to control the flow of information to manage that threat. The control becomes visible eventually through its effects, even when the mechanism itself stays hidden. Someone investigates. The evidence surfaces, and the person who tried to control everything ends up losing far more than they ever would have if they'd simply let things unfold naturally. That pattern repeats itself across every kind of organization you can name. The monarchy just happens to do it with a bit more ceremony and considerably higher stakes. The fundamentals stay exactly the same. Honestly, the detail that lingers longest is this. William had to conduct something close to an internal investigation just to understand why his own father's schedule wasn't being adjusted. This wasn't some distant policy dispute. This was a son watching his father exhaust himself, unable to step in and help because someone was deliberately blocking the very process that would have let him. That isn't politics, that's family. A son trying to protect his father while still respecting his authority. A stepmother trying to hold on to her position. A father caught in the middle, unaware of the full picture until the moment it was finally placed in front of him. It's almost Shakespearean in its structure, except instead of tragedy, it ends with a king looking at the evidence and making the right call, at the right moment. This new chapter isn't just about William taking on more duties, it's about a different approach to transparency and process going forward. If nothing else, this experience will have made him deeply aware of how easily information can be controlled and how important it is to build systems that prevent exactly this kind of interference from happening again. He won't forget what it took to get the truth in front of his father, and that awareness will shape how he runs things one day when the responsibility is fully his to carry. If this story kept you here until the very end, that's exactly why this channel exists. There's more waiting behind these palace doors, including what really happens to the secretary who risked everything to tell the truth. Subscribe now so you're here the moment that story is ready to be told.